also means a state of being apart, of being other.
The state of being apart, of being other.
Of being other.
No home to go to.
Other.
Hello everybody and welcome to our webinar on the Young Ensemble Scheme. My name is Shona Nibrian. I'm the head of Young People, Children and Education at the Arts Council. Sorry, we had a couple of technical glitches there at the start, but we're going to show that piece again at the very end. That was Limerick Youth Dance Company and the piece that they made with funding through the Young Ensemble Scheme. And you're going to hear from members of Limerick Youth Dance Company a bit later on. If those members want to give a little wave now, just to say hello. We're going to hear from Eilish, Mary Kate and from Rachel later on from Limerick Youth Dance Company. And also we have with us today at the webinar Droichead Youth Theatre, who are also going to share some information about their project. So we've got Christina, Aisha and Sean there waving, and you'll hear from them later on. Katie Fitzpatrick is our advisor in the YPCE team, so she's going to be facilitating the discussion with our young ensembles later on. Also on the call we have the YPCE team, so it's really myself and Katie who just waved, and I think Emer maybe her camera isn't working at the moment, but we have a very important member of team who's been doing all the background work here, so Emer is with us on the call here as well.
And I'm going to leave and come back in. I'm going to restart this computer, and looking forward to joining the meeting very shortly.
That's great. We're also joined today by Katie from the Creative Europe desk, who works with us in the Arts Council, and Katie's going to be sharing some information towards the end of the session around European funding that is available for young ensembles. So I was going to hand over to Emer for some housekeeping, but I think maybe I'll have to try and remember to do it myself, and I think Katie is probably putting the housekeeping in the chat as well, in case I forget anything. So really, we won't be able to see anybody's images during today's session, other than those of us that you see now here that are on the panel. There's one image that you don't see, and that says Karen Captioner on my screen. And this whole webinar is being captioned. So if you want to view captioning, you can select it at the bottom of your screen. And I think it automatically goes to quite small captions, so we'd advise you to put it to medium size because it's much easier to read in that way, if anyone wants captioning throughout this event. The way that you can interact with us, I suppose, if you have questions throughout the event, is to write them in the chat. Katie is going to be keeping an eye on the chat throughout the event, and we will try and answer your questions as we go through. And if we leave anything out at the end, you can always contact us again and just say, you never answered my question, and we will definitely get back to you with it. But we're going to do our best to answer as many questions as we can today. So I am going to share my screen. You guys can stay on there for a little bit while I share my screen if you like. And then once I have my slides up, you can disappear off until it comes to your section. And Katie, if I've forgotten anything, please fill people in.
Shona, we should just mention as well that it's being recorded, so it will be available afterwards to view.
Thanks very much. That's great. Yeah. Okay, hopefully you guys can see this. So later on, we're going to be getting into some detail around the Young Ensemble Scheme. But first, we wanted to just give you like an introduction to really the Arts Council and an overview of the range of supports, because the Young Ensemble Scheme is just one of those. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to be then hearing from the different young ensembles that have been supported, and I think they'll be able to share some really great insights with you in terms of what type of project and work can be supported through the scheme, and some tips for making an application. And then myself and Emer will come back to just go through some of the nuts and bolts, the technical stuff, looking at our guidelines and how to actually make an application. Then Katie will speak around the European funding, and we'll have questions again at the end. So just to give you an overview of the Arts Council, we're the national government agency for developing the arts in Ireland, and we work in partnership with artists, arts organisations, public policy makers and others to build a central place for the arts in Irish life. And this slide here is showing our strategy, just some little images from our strategy documents. So we have a 10-year strategy which runs to 2025. And there's an objective within that strategy, Objective 8, to plan and provide for children and young people. So this is really an important part of our work across all parts of the organisation. We also have a number of policies and strategies that sort of come within that broader 10-year plan. So I've pulled out some of those that, for this slide also. So we have paying the artist is one of our key policies, I suppose, really just to ensure that professional artists are paid for their work, and it's important to emphasize that, and to just ensure that artists know what kind of rates of pay are out there within their industry, and to ensure that they're paid fairly. And the other document that I've just put an image there from is our equality, human rights and diversity policy, which is really important across all areas of our work. We really want to ensure that the full diversity of Irish life is represented, I suppose, across the Arts Council supports. And you'll see later in the Young Ensemble Scheme that in the objectives and priorities, we actually have a key objective there around encouraging young people from diverse backgrounds to collaborate together as ensembles. So the Young People, Children and Education team, I suppose our focus within the Arts Council is children and young people's engagement with the arts from birth to early adulthood. So really usually going, from the very early years up to age 24. We manage funding for arts organisations and artists that work primarily in this area. And then we also support other teams in the Arts Council. So actually the Arts Council is made up of a lot of tiny teams. There's a team for each art form. So for example, literature, traditional arts, film, theatre, dance, street art and spectacle and circus. So in those art form areas, and also we have some cross art form areas in some teams. So for example, there are 43 funded multidisciplinary art centres around the country. So those have a team within the Arts Council that manages that funding. We have partnerships with every local authority in the country. And so we have a local arts team as well that focuses on that funding and partnership. So we basically support those different teams whenever any of that funding is specifically around the area of children and young people. So for example, every local authority in the area is doing supporting different work, whether it's in early childhood arts, they might be running an artist in school scheme or other kinds of supports like that. And then, so there's a lot of internal collaboration that happens within the Arts Council, and then we also work in partnership with other government departments and agencies whose policies and provision impact on children and young people's experience of the arts, because we have our part to play, but of course other departments and agencies will really have an impact on what young people's experience of the arts is. So for example, a very important initiative that the Arts Council is leading out on is Creative Schools, which some of you might be aware of, which is a partnership with the Department of Education and Skills, our own parent department, of culture and arts and many other things. And the Department of Children, Equality, Disability, Integration and Youth also plays a role in that partnership. So that's part of the way that we work also. But I suppose we're mostly known as a funding agency. So I just thought I'd put up here some of the different funds that we manage and that we run. So we've actually recently announced strategic funding for the year. So those we've a number of organisations that are funded specifically that work entirely with children and young people, but strategic funding is across the whole organisation. So there's really, it covers all art form areas and areas of practice. Arts grant funding is another cross-organisation fund that we have, and the decisions for this year have actually already been made and that funding has gone out. But on the 27th of May will be a deadline for those who are looking at developing plans for 2022. So those are kind of large scale applications and enable organisations to do quite complex programmes of work over a period of time. So today you can see here the highlighted in blue are the Young Ensemble Scheme, which is what we're going to talk about today. But I thought I'd also highlight the Artist and Youth Work Residency Scheme. That's funded by ourselves and the Department of Children, Equality, Disability, Integration and Youth, and run by the National Youth Council of Ireland. So they have some information about that scheme up on their website, and I think that the deadline is going to be the 20th of April, so it's worth checking that out. Those, both the Young Ensemble Scheme and Artists and Youth Work Residency really focus on that, the age group really 10 to 24, kind of in line with the youth strategy. So very relevant to anybody signing into today's webinar. And they also, what they have in common is that they happen outside of school space. The other awards that we have here, I thought I might just mention the Project Award. We just introduced this last year, and it is we funded €1 million worth of projects in the area of young people, children and education, and we are expecting that there will be a deadline in mid-August for project awards that are proposed for 2022. So keep an eye on that, and we'll share more information about that on our website also. The YPCE bursaries for individual artists that work with and for children and young people. We're currently assessing a round of bursaries, and there's going to be another round in June of this year. Creative Schools, which I mentioned earlier, also has a deadline coming up on 6th of May. So if your school is not a part of this project, maybe have a look at this and maybe have a chat with your principal and see if the school might be interested in applying, because this it's for primary and post-primary schools and youth reach centres, all kinds of education settings, and really allows schools to avail of the support of a creative associate to work with the school to develop a plan for the arts and creativity and some seed funding to carry that out. I couldn't even include them all. There's so many different funding schemes, which you'll be able to look at on our website, and we'll be happy to help you with any questions. The creative places and Fuin Spare I included there also, because those are for really local authorities. But if you're a youth group that wants to maybe collaborate with your local authority arts office or with a local initiative, that could be an interesting one to get in touch with other local partners and see if you might be part of an application. So today, however, we are going to focus on the Young Ensemble Scheme, and no better people to tell you about the Young Ensemble Scheme than ensembles that have been supported through this award. So I'm going to hand it over to our advisor Katie, and to Limerick Youth Dance Company and to Droichead Youth Theatre to take this next section.
Thanks, Shona. And just to say apologies, especially to Limerick Youth Dance Company. I don't know why I hadn't shared the sound for their dance piece. I'm so sorry. But we'll share it at the end with sound. So if everyone wants to hang on at the end, you'll be able to see an excerpt from that. It's really stunning. So Shona, you're still screen sharing there, if you can. And just to say, for those who are listening and watching, if you want to change to gallery view, I don't know what your setting comes up as, but it just means that you can see everybody who's speaking at once, because the two ensembles who are talking today won't have presentations, I don't think. So it's nice to be able to see all the faces at the same time. So yeah, so I think get the nicest job this evening, which is to introduce and facilitate some questions with two young ensembles who've been funded through the Young Ensemble Scheme previously, both a number of times. We have, as Shona has said, Limerick Youth Dance Company, who you can see here with me now, and Droichead Youth Theatre will be coming on afterwards. So I'd love to just give you all a really warm welcome and say thanks for agreeing to take part, especially in such an unusual way. It's, you know, you miss being able to see people and see reactions. So I think the young people are just fantastic for supporting us this evening. We get such a broad range of ensembles applying every year across all art forms, working in lots of different ways in different contexts, all across the country. So I think tonight, just the presentations will just give a flavour of the kinds of activities that can happen. They'll hopefully inspire you and your ensemble to apply and also give you a few tips for applying yourself. So we'll have about 10 minutes with each group presenting about their specific projects. And if you want to put any questions for the groups into the chat function, we'll have 10 minutes at the end of this section to have a bit of a Q&A and a bit of a conversation specifically with the groups about their experiences or any top tips. So hopefully we'll have a little bit of time for that. But I'd like to hand over to Rachel, Mary, Kate and Eilish from Limerick Youth Dance Ensemble. Thanks a million.
Thanks, Katie. Hi everyone, my name is Rachel Shiel. I'm the Artistic Director of Limerick Youth Dance Company, and I will be talking with my wonderful members, Mary Kate and Eilish today. We are 2 years old this January, and we have had the massive privilege of being funded by the Young Ensemble Scheme 2 years in a row. So we're here to talk to you about what we got up to for those projects. Primarily, we're going to be talking about the excerpt that we showed today, which was a dance film that we ended up making through the COVID restrictions called Apart. It was made in a historical site in Limerick called Sailor's Home, and it was directly the creation of the LYDC members who sat down and talked to me about what they wanted to make, what was important to them theme-wise. And yeah, I'm going to leave it there because Mary Kate and Eilish are going to be amazing and talk about each a bunch of different simple questions we have all lined up for you. So hi Mary Kate, would you like to introduce yourself? Actually, how long have you been with LYDC, etc.?
Hi everyone, I'm Mary Kate. So I've been in LYDC since the start. I joined as a trainee, so yeah.
Great. So you're going to talk to us about the process of coming up with the ideas that we then ended up writing in the application. So do you want to talk to me about the process of how we came up with our ideas?
So for Apart, it was a long time that we were making this. We started it in like the end of 2019. We came up with like the initial idea of choosing 2 words, and then we just kind of chose them and just rolled with it. So we chose home and loneliness, and those 2 words were just like the main inspiration. And
they were before COVID as well, weren't they?
Yeah, exactly. So then when restrictions hit and stuff, it had like a whole new meaning and it became way more meaningful. So, yeah.
And what did we originally want to make before it became a dance film?
So we wanted to do a live performance, since we had just made a film and we were like, a live performance would be lovely. But we had the live performance set in our heads for like a really long time, but I think towards the end we were like, yeah, I don't think this can happen. So we decided to make a film and we were all just like super on board about it. I think at that point we just wanted to be together and do something, make something, whatever it was. So
great. And so in the room when we were coming up with the idea, like what was that like? How did we all choose what we wanted to do?
I mean, for Apart, it was heavily based by the members. I think, we started as 5 members and then we grew, and even since our group got bigger, we were all like, no, we were all on board and we all wanted to make decisions. So we all just kind of sat down. We were all just kind of like saying stuff that we wanted. And even when we were like making the application, we would film videos that we would then send in and we'd like cut them down a bit. So during that time, we were all just like super giddy, and that was pre-COVID. And every time like someone went in to do the video, like everyone was just so hyper and like excited to do it. So that just made making decisions and kind of, coming up with things a lot easier. So we just talked about it.
Yeah, I think the videos were a big part of both of our applications, is that I would film you guys talking about the project, and that was part of our supporting material. So that was a really great way to show your passion for it and that this was coming from you as well. Was this the first time we applied, Mary Kate, or have we had projects funded before?
We have been funded before. We got funded for Magic Shop. That project was
Magic Shop, yes.
So Magic Shop is a song by BTS. It was mainly what Rachel wanted to do, and everyone was just like, yes, we're gonna do it. It was a bigger project since we had way more people. We got male dancers from Dublin and then just other dancers around Limerick to come on. And we got a set designer, and it was also a film. But it was just so lovely, and we filmed in the church in the square, like Limerick Square.
Great.
And it was filmed by Lucy. So yeah, everything was so lovely about it.
Great. Thank you, Mary Kate. Thanks for your lovely answers. We're going to move on to Eilish. Hi, Eilish. And Eilish, you're going to talk to us about how our content and the highlights and the lowlights of. You can talk both about a part and Magic Shop if you like.
Okay, well, I'll start with the part. So I think some highlights from a part would be seeing everybody, because obviously due to COVID, we didn't film the project how we intended, but I think it turned out a lot better than what we were expecting. I think another highlight would be how lucky we were as a group to have such great help making this piece between, the sound and filming, because obviously we had Shane and Lucy, and then we had Rachel. And then I think some lowlights would be COVID, just full stop, because it kind of stopped a lot of kind of us meeting up to progress the film, and us, us between whether we were going to film it or not. And so, as I think, when I talk about Magic Shop, I will, or not. So some Magic Shops, I think a highlight would be when we were filming Magic Shop. It was my first time doing a project with LYDC, so it was an amazing opportunity for me. I also think it was really great how many people I met at Magic Shop, even though we were all different ages. We all had dance in common. We all had a love for dance, and that's, I think, why we connected so much in the film. And I don't think there were any negatives or lowlights to it.
Amazing. Thanks, Eilish. Yeah, you came about a year in to LYDC, didn't you?
Yeah.
Great. Nice one. And so, what recommendations would you give to people like yourself, to young people who want to make something and they don't know how to ask for the money they need to make something?
I think maybe get some help with the application is quite important, because parts of it is quite hard to fill out. And I think, that just bit of extra pressure off you if you got an adult to help you, because we had Rachel to help us, is really important. I also think it's extremely important to believe in your piece and to be confident in the piece that you're putting forward to the application. And if it's your first time applying, to not be nervous. You never know until you try. So I think you should just go for it and have no regrets, especially while making the piece. You should just explore every option, and if it doesn't work, that's fine. Just think outside the box a bit.
Amazing. I think that's wonderful advice, to not be afraid to ask for what you want and to think big. And yeah, I mean, I would be that adult in your lives that's ready to do whatever for you. So find an adult that really wants to encourage you in your ideas. And so Mary Kate and Eilish, because we've made dance films this whole time with the Young Ensemble Scheme, what in the future would you like to do?
I feel like we would like to do a live project. I think that's kind of our main goal.
Yeah, is to perform live for a change. Great. Well done. I'm happy. I'm so happy with that. And you did wonderfully. Really well done.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Great contributions there and some lovely tips. And just a reminder to people, you do have an opportunity, because we'll do a kind of a bigger Q&A at the end, but if you do have something specific for the groups, it's a nice opportunity in about 10 minutes to be able to pop questions to them. So I'm sure you're listening, but if you do have questions to the specific projects, then do drop them into the chat. So thank you all from Limerick Youth Dance Company. So if you guys want to switch off your cameras and we will introduce, I'll wait till everyone's here. Droichead Youth Theatre, welcome, thanks a million. So we have Christina, Aisha and Sean from Droichead Youth Theatre. So I'm gonna switch myself off and let you guys take over, thanks.
Great, thank you Katie for that introduction. So I'm Christina, I'm the Artistic Director with Droichead Youth Theatre in Droichead, County Louth. And we're very lucky that we've received the Young Ensembles grant 7 times now. So we have a huge range of projects over the last kind of 8 years or so that have kind of really inspired us and really pushed us as an ensemble. The funding has really allowed us to grow the kind of work we can do. The specific project we've chosen to talk to you about today is our production of Oh What a Lovely War, which we did in 2018 to line up with the centenary of the end of World War I. The reason we've picked this project is because it came about in a totally organic way in a workshop where our plan was just to eat Christmas, like pull Christmas crackers and hang out for a day, and suddenly it all got a bit out of hand, which where this project came from. So I'm going to hand over to Sean first. Sean, I'd love you to tell us a little bit, if you have any thoughts generally about the Young Ensemble Scheme and what you'd like, what our history with it had been before we began Lovely War, and then please tell us about the wonderful journey we had creating Oh What a Lovely War's application.
Yeah, definitely. So in terms of the Young Ensemble Scheme, of course, as Christina mentioned there, we've been lucky enough to receive it 7 times, of which personally I've been part of 3 of those. So in the past, we've done different ones and funded different things. So I was part of a project called 9 Hot Lives, in which we used the money to fund and bring in a writer who worked with us to write a completely original piece as an ensemble, and that was really great. Whereas with Lovely War, we used the money to bring in a professional costume designer and dramaturg. So like I'll throw up a few pictures here in the background as I speak about it, but this is some of our class costume here. So even the great thing about the Young Ensemble Scheme being that each project is so different. So with 9 Hot Lives, I remember that was completely costumed by ourselves, whereas for Oh What a Lovely War, we got to work with a professional costume designer, which was it was just so fantastic to get that experience with them. In terms of how it arose, we were basically having our annual Christmas party that we always have around Christmas time. And we started talking about all the lovely Christmas ads that we find to be our favorite. And we started circling around a little bit of a heated debate. Imagine a lot of young people who are all into drama, all good at speaking their minds, start speaking about an ad that they believe might have been using World War I as an propaganda for capitalism. So it all stemmed from there. That one ad that used when Germany and England played a football match in no man's land. And from there, we started exploring about World War I and how we knew little to nothing about it. And from that stemmed our work on Oh What a Lovely War.
Great, thank you so much for that, Sean. So generally, when we're working on an application, could you tell us a little bit about what that process is like? So we knew we wanted to work on World War I. We'd looked at a few different scripts. We liked the Lovely War script. And then what did we do? Say in those like 2 or 3 weeks in the run up to submission deadline?
Yeah, so what we really did was we just got little parts of the script that we kind of felt were fun to play with, but were also contrasted against each other. So we tried to get a little mix. So we workshopped different parts of the script. And then we kind of just, because it was something that we felt so strongly about, even when we were just talking about just that Christmas ad in the first place, you could show, like, we could see that we were passionate about what we wanted to work on with it. So then in terms of filling out the application then, we all wrote paragraphs on the different things that we were most passionate about when it came to the project. So me personally, I was really excited about all this fun costume. So what we have like in the show is a really nice mix of the seriousness of the soldiers versus these kind of clown characters that are used as a device to kind of be a serious versus satirical and really push on the messages and really how atrocious World War I was when it comes to capitalism and the abuse of powers there with politicians. So yeah, we all just wrote our own paragraphs on what we were most passionate about, and then we kind of mishmash Frankensteined it together in the application, made a few edits here and there, and then sent it off.
Great, thank you so much for that, Sean. As predicted, we answered one question in our first 5 minutes. Aisha, I'm going to hand over to you now. I'm interested in hearing a bit more about what working on Oh What a Lovely War was like in practice. What did it enable you to do as a member of our ensemble, and in particular things that maybe wouldn't have been possible without the funding? But tell us all and your journey throughout the project.
Sure. Well, I mean, I think Oh What a Lovely War was actually my first big project, kind of moving on up into the senior drama group. And we are a fairly small group, you know, we're not absolutely massive that we can put on these fancy productions just, you know, with the flick of a hat. So usually when we're doing projects sort of within ourselves without any funding whatsoever, and, you know, usually we try and workshop, we try and write the script ourselves, usually maybe 1 or 2 days before we put on the play. So my point is basically, usually we sort of divide the work amongst ourselves. And so you'll have the actors basically doubling up on costumes, on makeup, on lighting, on stage directing, etc. But Oh What a Lovely War was just such a massive project to tackle that we truly didn't have, I guess, the flexibility to do it all on our own, which is, you know, like Sean said, why we decided to shoot for it in the first place. So when we finally got the grant, we were able to get in all these external people to work on it with us. And we had, as Sean said, this fantastic dramaturg who also doubled as a voice coach for us, which was very, very interesting, trying to read sheet music for the first time. We also got the brilliant costume designer, Mary Sheehan, and Sean and a few other members got to work alongside her up close and personal. So I think it enabled us to bring in all these other forces. And I mean, Christina was saying she gets lonely being the only adult sort of surrounded by all these teenagers. So I suppose that would have been nice for her as well. But it really sort of helps as a young actor or actress, you know, diplomacy in drama is such a massive part of everything. And to give us the opportunity to kind of forge these external relationships and develop these diplomatic connections, that was just an opportunity that can't be rivaled really by anything we'd be able to put on just completely on our own. So yeah.
Great, thank you so much for that, Aisha. You mentioned there it's one of my biggest recommendations. So one thing we're going to bring to you guys next is recommendations that we have for you out there who might be starting a young ensemble scheme. Aisha has just mentioned my number one recommendation, which is look at where the holes are in your program as a youth leader. So for me, last year, I stopped promoting shows. I don't care. I just make the shows. So we're like, but no one was knowing that we were doing it. So it's how do we look at press releases, get the local media involved, all that kind of thing. So we used our last young ensemble scheme last year to bring in a producer who taught the young people to write press releases, because I'm never going to do it. Where are the holes? Where can you bring in other practitioners to help you as well as the young people? So that would be my number one top tip. Sean, any top tips for ensembles out there on putting together an application?
Yeah, definitely. As I mentioned before about mishmashing and coming together, arts is all about the collaboration, whether it be drama or dance or anything like that. It's all about collaboration, and there's never just one person behind the steering wheel, realistically. So yeah, it's don't let yourself do it on your own. Definitely come together, especially because you're not going to have the same ideas as your peers or other people might do, and vice versa. So it's really great really to just work together when it comes to that kind of thing. And then it really takes the workload off, and it really comes off. And also in that, definitely have a passion or a drive for what you want to do. It's like if you're reading an application, you can really see the passion come off the paper. It doesn't need to be really fancy or flowery language. They're not looking for the next Shakespeare. They're just looking for young people who are really passionate about what they want to do, and really showing that they want to create great things with the Young Ensemble Scheme.
Great, well done. Thank you, Sean. Aisha, top tips for the people out there, webinar land. Oh, great photo, Sean.
Well, I mean, going off what Sean said, passion is key to starting off an application, because, you know, we were so fortunate that Oh What a Lovely War came about in such an organic way, and it was something that, you know, you just it clicks when you find it and you realize, oh my God, everyone in this room will put the work in to do this. And I think people are usually intimidated by the technicalities of filling out applications. They think, ooh, what are the boxes I need to tick? And, you know, how should I word this? Blah, blah, blah. You know, don't get too caught up and too intimidated that, you know, even writing a sentence out is a struggle. Because the truth is they have these grants for a reason, and it's to enable you to do something that you really, really want to do. So if you find a project that you are just so passionate about, just word vomit onto your computer, onto your page. Just absolutely, Sean's nodding, just keep typing, because passion always reads through, and that's what they're looking for. They're looking for people who really, really want to give this amazing piece of work, and they want help, and, you know, usually they'll get it if they work it. And obviously do your research. I'm not saying just rely on your feelings, but it definitely is a great starting point.
Great, thank you so much, Aisha. Katie, I'm probably over time because that's how Droichead generally talk. Would that be about right?
Oh, you're bang on. You are bang on. Well done.
Go, Sean and Aisha.
So proud of us. So proud of us.
Our practice run was 7 minutes over, so
yeah,
thank you.
you can go full flight now in the Q&A. The group from Limerick Youth Dance Company, do you want to join us back in as well? So we're all. There's Eilish, great. So just to throw in a couple of questions, I might direct this to LYDC maybe. So one question I have is, did you feel you had ownership of the project, and what gave you that sense of ownership of the process?
I think for us, especially at Part, we had like a lot of ownership. I think from the get-go, it was like, this is your project. But yeah, it was just really fun to have a project that was just us, and especially with a bigger group, we had like so many more ideas. So yeah, it was fun.
What do you mean by bigger group, Mary Kate? Is that when we got more dancers in?
Like when we had our auditions at the start of the year, and we gained like way more members. So we became like a 13-member group. So
sorry, I didn't want to cut across you, Eilish, if you wanted to join in, but there's a specific question that whether any problems of changing the plan from a live performance to dance on film in terms of the, you know, contacting us about it, or even just in yourselves in the way that you had to kind of work as a group to adapt it.
Yeah, in terms of the funding, I always kept in touch and kept communicative, and just I kept telling like how it was changing and how it had to change. And as long as I kept communicating, you guys were so wonderful and understanding, especially in our current times. But we've always had that it's just extremely supportive environment. So it's always just like, as long as you're telling us, and as long as there are kind of justifiable reasons why things have to. I mean, art. Making art is just like that. It changes all the time, but as long as the young people are in the center of it and they're being supported and it's coming from them consistently, you guys are wonderful in that support.
And I would say that's true even not in COVID times, because things always have to change in projects. Like, don't have a meltdown if the lighting designer you picked suddenly isn't available. You have to swap personnel, or if things change, or if one group writes an application and then they all quit to do their leaving cert, and another group of young people come in who don't care about Donald Trump but want to dress up like flappers. There are ways you can still adapt those applications, you know, to meet the criteria, but honor the young people you currently have. So don't stress over changes. I mean, I've had such great experience too with the Arts Council. They want young people to make art, and that's what they're supporting, not supporting how well you can, you know, follow the letter of something that you wrote a year and a half ago.
And maybe just thinking of that, maybe to come to you, Eilish, just to give you a chance to answer that first question I had in terms of the process of the project, you know, and the ownership that you had, and how you felt about that throughout.
Yeah, well, I think Rachel, as a kind of a teacher, is quite open with us about what's going on with the projects and stuff. And I think she makes it clear to us, she made it clear to us at the very start that this project may not be able to happen because of COVID. But as you know, as the weeks went by in lockdown and stuff like that, we kind of just progressed the project in hopes that we could do it. And then kind of at the end, I think we all kind of decided silently that it would just be better off to film it. And then Rachel was like, oh yeah, well, I think it is better to film it.
Yeah, and listen, it's hard being a leader, and the project only happened because of LYDC. I mean, there were so many times where I just wanted to throw my hands up in the air, and that I think they had complete ownership over this project, because every time I was ready to throw in the towel, they'd be like, we're going to keep going, we're going to keep doing this, we're going to keep motivated, we're going to keep supporting each other. Every solo that you see in the dance film was made by each member, and I was just there to watch them be and help with that. It was an incredible experience, and their strength and resilience is insane during these times.
That's fantastic. And one other question maybe for Droichead is, what would you say to groups who put in a lot into their application but are unsuccessful in getting funding?
What I would say is, here's your sister right here. We haven't gotten every application we've ever put in. There is no like, oh, I know how to do it, and now I'll get this funding forevermore, because the quality in the country is huge. So don't beat yourself up. It does not mean that your application is not great. Sometimes you can just be unlucky. Maybe if there's like, you know, 14 youth theatres and 2 visual arts groups, I wouldn't fund all 13 and none of the visual arts. What I would say is get the feedback from the Arts Council. Do this even if your application is successful. They give amazing feedback and genuinely useful stuff that will give you direction in terms of, well, there wasn't enough detail there, or you needed more to flesh out here. It's incredibly useful, and you won't get that level of feedback from every grant body. So that would be my number one recommendation. And just remember that it's so competitive. It's not necessarily about you, but you might get it the next time by just taking that feedback on board. I'm getting some serious nods from Sean. Do you have something to add there, or are you just more like, yeah?
I just agree strongly. Yeah, but it's always the same in the arts. It's not always going to be like super successful, and it's not always going to go fantastically your way. But it's what we've all learned from like being in the arts and love the arts so long, is just like keep going for it, and if it's meant for you, it won't pass you, kind of thing. Yeah.
Fab. Aisha, do you have anything you want to add to the?
I think unfortunately rejection is something that you have to encounter a lot if you're in something like arts. So, you know, just don't take it personally is always the key to, you know, to getting stronger, and you know, never be scared to try again if you're that scared of the rejection, you know, because then you won't get it. Simple as. Always apply afterwards. Never let it, you know, make you feel defeated.
Fab, thank you. And we have another question in about just any tips for getting the young people in another group involved in the application, i.e. the videos, and someone else has come in to say that they get their members to write little personal responses to the project. So maybe I'll direct this to LYDC, because I know you use the videos as a way to kind of engage in dialogue around the initial idea process, but maybe what that experience is like, or any other tips that you have regarding that.
Yeah, because so far I've been the one to write the application. However, we meet every Saturday, and I would always be updating them, always encouraging them, like, so I do write the application process, but what I do is I write all of their ideas, like literally, even if it's just this fancy thing of like we recently had a glow in the dark paint idea, and then three other people were like, I love that idea. So I write anything and everything down, and then my job is to incorporate and try to make it facilitate it. I just want to make it happen. So the idea process is their ideas. They just word vomit on me, as Aisha so poetically said earlier. They word vomit on me. Oh, lovely image. And then I write it all down. And then from then on, when we're writing the application and I'm trying to get yourselves to understand LYDC's passion, that's when we get videos of them actually talking about the project. Although now, especially, this is quite inspiring listening to Droichead and stuff, I might get my members to be writing a little bit more. And they're like, oh! But yeah, so that's what we've done so far. However, because we're all creatives here, we're all artists here, I would give a tip on think how you best disseminate information. How do you best, like with your group, want to share what you do and how you do it? And then kind of pick from there. I mean, this is what has worked with us for us so far.
Fab, thank you. There might be more that might come up at the end. I'm just conscious we're at time now for this part. So I think, Shona, you're coming in now, and I think we'll all switch our cameras off. Thank you all so much. That was so insightful. And I think there's been more questions will come up as people process this information. I shall hand over. I'll wait till she's back on the screen. There you are.
Hello there.
Thanks, Shona.
And sorry, just getting that going. Hopefully that'll work. Just a huge thank you to Limerick Youth Dance Company and Droichead Youth Theatre. It's just fantastic hearing from you guys about your experience. I'm sure everybody, I could see even the chat as well was going, there were questions being answered in the chat at the same time as talking live. So thank you so much for your insights. So this is the bit, this image actually is, I think it's Galway Community Circus at one of our networking events. And I thought it was a nice image to show about the actual writing of the application process. So hopefully we won't lose too many of you at this point, because this is just some of the nuts and bolts to really make the best application that you can. So myself and Emer, if she's back online a little bit later, will be sharing some key points with you. And then after we've shared this and Katie Lowry is giving you a bit of an overview of European funding, we will have time for more questions and answers in the end. And you can continue to use the chat actually while I'm presenting as well. And I think Katie will be trying to give you some answers in the chat as we go. So everything that we're going to share here is taken from our guidelines. And there really is no getting around the need to just read the guidelines in full. They're very long documents, they can be dense, but it just hopefully from today's webinar, I'm pulling out some of the key points. You'll feel inspired that it actually is important to do this. And the wonderful thing about Ensembles is there's a group of you, so maybe not everybody needs to read all of the guidelines in detail, but nominate a couple of people to go through them, or at least one person. So yeah, I'm not going to say anything that isn't in the guidelines here, but just going to highlight some pieces because as they are so dense, some key information can pass you by. And we're going to talk about the objectives and priorities of the award, what supporting material you should submit along with your application, and then we're going to talk about the criteria for the assessment of applications, because really, you know, understanding how we assess the applications will help you to make the best case. And actually, anytime you apply for Arts Council support, there are three things that we look for. We look for artistic merit, feasibility, and meeting the objectives and priorities of the award. So, you know, you saw the long list of funding that I shared with you earlier on. So that's why it's really important to see each one has very specific objectives and priorities, and showing how your application meets those is a key part of the assessment process. So you find the guidelines by going onto our website. This is the long list of available funding, and it's in chronological order, and it gets updated each time a new application window is opening. So the application window is opening for Young Ensemble Scheme tomorrow. So from tomorrow, when you click in on Young Ensemble Scheme, you can already download the guidelines. Actually, those are there. And from tomorrow, you'll be able to click apply, and Emer's going to talk you through that process a little bit later. That's where you get the guidelines document, and you'll see actually on this page as well, there's an overview of the primary purpose of the scheme, and down at the bottom there's a little link which brings you through to another page that just gives you more background information about the scheme. You can see videos with featuring ensembles that have been supported before. You can link through to see what kind of projects have been supported and get lots of ideas and inspiration from there. So we recommend that you do that too. So this, for example, is what the page looks like now. That's our networking event that we had in Portlaoise in 2019. So there's a short video there that'll give you some more insights from different ensembles that have been funded. That page also has some advice for planning an application. And I actually thought I'd just talk through that right now, because these are some of the key things to keep in mind, and some of which we've just heard from the ensembles that we're presenting today. So some advice is really get together, network, and brainstorm your ideas as a group. Read through the guidelines and just plan how you're going to approach the application. It's really important that the proposal has been developed by young people and that young people will have ownership of the project. You can apply for a budget to work with professional artists and mentors to help you realise your ambitions, and you can also apply for other costs associated with your project. So, for example, one of the costs is documenting your project. So, you know, we really encourage you to factor that into your budget and think about how you might do that, because then you can have a really nice document for yourselves and to share your work with other people afterwards. You can't apply for fees for the Young Ensemble members. But if you are a professional group, there's a wide range of other supports that you can think about applying for if you're now kind of really starting a career in the arts and you want to apply as a professional group. Consider partnerships with organisations that can help you to manage the project or can help bring artistic supports or mentorship. So is there an art centre in your area that you can partner with, or another arts organisation? Connecting with your local authority arts office and see if they have ideas. The infrastructure is there to support you, and they're being encouraged also to do that as part of their own remit. So they'll be really happy to help you out or point you in the right direction. And if you're wondering, where to start, you can also contact us in the Arts Council, and we can talk through and just see, depending on where you're based, what might be good organisations to connect with. And then just to say again that the focus of this particular scheme is on arts outside of schools, so schools can't apply for this scheme. So there are two strands for the Young Ensemble Scheme, and you can apply for one or the other. I'll talk about that again in a moment. And this is just taken from the page that's what you'll read there on our website, and you can click in and look at all of that information. But yeah, in terms of strand 1 or strand 2, really they're very similar. There's just a couple of key differences. So strand 1 you can apply for up to 10,000, and strand 2 you can apply for more than 10,000 but no more than 25,000. For either strand, you could be an established ensemble and apply for either strand, depending on the scale of what it is that you want to do. But for strand 1, you could also be a new ensemble. So you may be that maybe some of your members have worked on a project together, and there's been some preliminary work, or you might have been involved in a residency, and now you want to begin a project as a new group. So strand 1 is definitely for you in that case. Strand 2 must be an established ensemble, so you've already created work together and you have a track record, and you can share that as part of your application. And the other key thing, again, with strand 2, you have to make clear why you need more than 10,000, because otherwise you should just apply for strand 1. But why is it? Your budget has to be really realistic, and you can see why you're applying for the larger amount. So in terms of the assessment criteria, as I mentioned before, these are artistic merit, feasibility, and meeting the objectives and priorities of the award. So I'm just going to read through actually some of these objectives and priorities. These are again all taken from the guidelines. It's important that young people have played a role in developing the proposal and will play a central role in shaping, delivering, documenting, and evaluating the project. It should be a high quality artistic process that's ambitious and original and provides a challenging and rewarding experience for the participants and enables them to develop their artistic skills. the proposal should ensure that young people will have ownership of the work they undertake, and that might be engaging in the process of devising, creating, composing, designing an original piece, or engaging with an existing piece, but in a way that allows this ensemble to make it their own. The proposal should be youth-led, or it'll actively support and develop youth leadership in the arts. We want the ensemble to benefit from the expertise, support, or mentorship of professional artists or arts organisations, where that's going to help them to push or develop their practice. And the proposal should include evidence of your activities to date and how this funding is going to enable you to develop that experience further. And if it's a new ensemble, you can look at what you can share, what your previous projects were that you were involved in, and how you're therefore going to be able to grow and build from that in this proposal. And as mentioned earlier, we welcome in particular initiatives that enable young people from diverse backgrounds to collaborate in a high quality artistic process, and in particular within that, to enable young people with disabilities to engage in a high quality artistic process. And actually, if your project does involve young people with disabilities, or indeed collaborating with artists with disabilities, there is an exception where you can go beyond the stated amount in the strand, so beyond the 10,000 or 25,000, where you can show that there's a specific additional costs that are required in order to ensure that everybody will be able to participate in the project. So I won't go into detail here. Actually, we've kind of included the key ideas of artistic merit into the objectives and priorities of the award, but the guidelines do kind of give an overview as well of what the Arts Council means when we talk about artistic merit, so you can read those there. And similarly, feasibility, the guidelines share kind of general idea about what we mean by feasibility, but really it's, does your budget make sense? Does your timeline make sense? Does the schedule make sense? Do you have the different people involved that are going to make this happen and make this possible? And so I'm going to just say a little bit about supporting material. So I think there was a little bit of discussion about this earlier about, maybe sharing videos, short videos. Those can be really, really important in helping to really give a flavour of your project and of who's in your ensemble and what the different ideas are. But supporting material, really, it's essential. In section 1.7, it kind of lays out what those key documents are that you have to include to be eligible and to be assessed. But it also, the supporting material, when you go about it in the right way, will really help you make the case for support. And what we like to encourage you to do is to upload your supporting material as a single document if you can, with a table of contents at the start. And the panelists who are assessing and making a decision about your application will really appreciate that, because it can be very unwieldy otherwise. So the more clearly you can label your supporting material, you'll make friends with the panelists who are assessing your application. So this is what the supporting material is that we ask for. So examples of previous relevant work. So it could be images, it could be video. There is all of the different formats are included in our guidelines. Evidence of the young people's ownership of the proposal, and in particular written recorded testimonies or interviews, can be very powerful there. CVs or biographies of any professional artists or other key individuals who are providing important mentorship and support to the project. And similarly, letters of support from them, so that they've gone, yeah, absolutely, would love to help you with this proposal, and very excited to work with you. If you're mentioning in your income and expenditure that you have other financial support, your supporting document should show that that's true. So for example, let's say you have in-kind support from a local art centre, while having a letter of support from that art centre saying, absolutely, that's fine, you can use our space for rehearsals, and the value of that is X amount of money. So yes, on the budget. So it's just there is a section within the application form where you include your income and expenditure. You want to make sure that those balance out, and include all of the costs that you need. And you should include in-kind support in both the income section and the expenditure section, just so that it all balances out. And then the difference between the two is the amount that you're requesting from the Arts Council. So I won't go into the details, but the guidelines include information on what you can't apply for, so what you shouldn't include in that budget. One of the things that sometimes is hard to find is on the schedule, which I mentioned before in terms of feasibility. So it can take up to 10 weeks for us to assess your application. So in terms for this year, the deadline for applications is the 15th of April 2021. So you shouldn't plan your project to begin any sooner than the 24th of June, because you won't have an answer by then. So try to make sure you plan your proposals for this year to begin after that date. So just in terms of the assessment process and what happens, when you put in an application, it gets assessed by the Young People Children Education team, but it'll also get sent for a secondary assessment from the art form team. So for example, if it's a youth dance company, the dance team will provide a secondary assessment on your application. The shortlisted applications then go to peer panel, and we usually have 4 people on our panels, usually 2 young people and 2 professional artist practitioners, and those are always really exciting days. They go through all of the shortlisted applications and discuss each in turn, and we try to have a range of art forms and different experiences informing the views of the panel. So they're each bringing their own perspective, but then hearing from each other during the day of the panel discussion, and they make the decisions on the applications, and our Arts Council makes a note of that, and applicants are let know about it, and then we publish the decisions on our website. So if Emer is on the call, she can join in here. I know we're kind of going over time here, but she might share a few top tips. Are you there, Emer?
Shona, thanks very much. I hope you can all hear and see me. Shona, I might ask you to move on the slides then. So the application process. So all applications are made electronically. You need to register with our online services, OLS. You'll see this on the Arts Council homepage. And when you register, you will receive your ARN and your password. Now, as a group, if you're already registered, you do not need to do this again. But make sure you do register as a group, because this is the only way you'll be able to access the award through online services and make your application. So individuals cannot register for this award. So make sure you have your contact details up there, email address, so on and so forth. You actually don't need to worry about bank details at this point. You'll be subject to funding, you'll have to supply this. So firstly, once you're registered and you're on the online services page, you will select whether you're applying for strand 1 or strand 2. You'll from the drop down, you'll choose Young Ensemble Scheme, and then you'll choose either strand 1 or strand 2. You can either apply through English, or you can download Oscuelga as well. You download the application form, and we'd recommend that you save this to your computer. Work on your application form and be sure to save it as you go along. You then upload your application form to online services and upload supporting material. An important note here about supporting material: when you're providing us with links to maybe your work, your previous work, we would ask that you provide this as a YouTube link. You can flag it as unlisted to protect your work up there on YouTube. But unfortunately, if we get links to Vimeo and so on and so forth, we can't actually use those. So that's a very important piece to note there. In the application system, as you're moving through it, you can continuously save as draft. So you can upload your application form, begin to upload your submit material, your support material. Make sure, give yourself enough time. Sometimes you can download something very, very quickly, but sometimes to upload, it can actually take a lot of time. Also to add, if before the deadline, if you've submitted your application and you discover you've left out something that's essential, that could make your application being ineligible, you will have to resubmit everything again. So again, give yourself lots and lots of time. Of course, once the deadline arrives at 5:30, you can't add anything to your application form after that point. So once everything is ready, you're ready to submit. The application form, now just very broadly speaking, this doesn't cover everything. You will have to sit down with your group and go through the application form, but really it's an opportunity to speak about you, to tell us what's your idea, to give you further description there of your idea. You'll talk about your budget, you'll cover the budget information there and supply any additional or relevant financial details that you feel will give further context to your application. Remember that several people will be involved in making a decision about your application, so make sure your application is clear, concise and unambiguous. Never assume that the assessors will know you or your work, or maybe some of the people you're going to work with. Treat each application as if it were your first application. And very importantly, always a good idea to have somebody from outside your group to read through your proposal that maybe doesn't speak quite the same language as you. That's a really good tip to have there as well. So common mistakes. Sometimes possibly not reading through the guidelines thoroughly, not including support material, leaving the application perhaps to the last minute, and not meeting the award criteria. So give yourself lots of time. The time frame. So tomorrow, Tuesday the 16th of March 2021, the scheme will open on OLS. As you say, at the moment you can download the award guidelines, but from tomorrow you'll be able to access the application form. And the closing date is 5:30 on the 15th of April 2021. So the advice: read the guidelines thoroughly, give yourself plenty of time to submit your application, communicate clearly, call us if you have any queries at all. And as Christina said earlier on, request feedback, whether you're unsuccessful or you are successful. If you have any questions at all, I know that email is in the chat there, ypce@artscouncil.ie. Our name's on the screen. You've met us all now today, Shona, myself, and Katie Fitzpatrick as well. It was really lovely to meet you. Contact details are on www.artscouncil.ie. Look up the Young People, Children and Education team. Thank you. Go raibh míle maith agat.
So I think Katie Lowry is going to join us now from the Creative Europe desk.
Thank you, Shona. Let me just share my presentation. So thanks so much to Shona and Emer and Katie for inviting me here. I'm going to try to keep it, quite brief. The message I really want to get across to everyone here today is really to introduce myself, let you know the kind of supports that are out there in terms of information and advice when it comes to European funding for culture. And I really see this as the start and what hopefully for some of you becomes, a longer term engagement. So I work in the Creative Europe Desk Ireland Culture Office. I haven't found an acronym yet for it. And we are housed in the Arts Council. So we're funded by the European Commission, and we're the designated national contact point for the Creative Europe programme, and more broadly, any inquiries related to European funding for arts and culture. So what we do is we assist organisations with their project development from a really early stage right through to when they submit an application. You'll many of you are aware, but a lot of European projects require partners. So we assist in identifying partners both here and in Europe, and we promote successful projects across all of our social media channels. And we run a lot of workshops and seminars and events like this each year. So I think this is a question that wherever you are, on your funding journey, whether you're getting funded through your local arts office, through the Arts Council, whoever it is, the first thing you need to start thinking about is why that particular organization is funding. So you're looking at the reason. So why does the EU fund culture? Obviously, the starting point is the intrinsic value, the recognition that arts and cultural activity, make all of our lives better on some level. But really the linchpin for this is funding for arts and culture is it's another tool for the EU to, realize their social and political aims. And the linchpin of all of this are kind of policy, essentially. This sounds very dry, but European policy. And where you see, a policy document, the funding, comes after that. So support for young people is really a very key area for the EU, and it crosses all the different funding programs. In 2018, they published the EU Youth Strategy, and I'll send, along with this presentation, I'll send all these links after. This was published in 2018, and it really lays out 11 goals for young people across Europe. And the overall aim is to foster youth participation in democratic life, but also in social and civic life. And that's where arts projects would come out of. So the EU, the majority of its funding comes through direct funding programs. So I'm the contact point for Creative Europe. And then there's Erasmus Plus, which is, they would fund all the youth actions and the non-formal learning actions. So really we'll look here, and I'm conscious of time, but like Shona was kind of mentioning with the Arts Council and the Making Great Art work and the objectives, the funding objectives that came out of that, we're looking to the next program. So we're at a really good point if any of the groups or organizations here are starting to want to, engage at European level or work with European partners, because we're at the start of the next 7-year funding program. And the good news is, I guess the silver lining of, COVID has been the European Commission's recognition of how devastating it's been for the arts and culture sectors. And they want to get as much money to those sectors as quickly as possible. So the overall program budget for Creative Europe has risen from the last program, it was 1.46 billion, and it's now 2.55 billion. If you're looking ahead, we're looking at the program itself being officially launched at the end of April, and we will have an event around that. But just to give you some idea, and again, one of the things that's really interesting where I think Ireland can do quite well is there's significant alignment between, why the EU wants to fund arts and culture projects and why the Arts Council does. So one of the big pushes in the next program would be equality and diversity, essentially. And this is what they call a horizontal priority. So if you are applying, under a youth program, this will be a priority there. If you're applying under a research program, this will be a priority there. Another one would be what they call Green Europe. So this is a commitment the EU has to sustainable Europe. So that's another one. And this one here is really, when you look at the projects that Europe funds, many of them will engage with children and young people. And so this, you can see, will come under the idea of social inclusion and intercultural dialogue. One thing, and again, I'm really running out of time, is the next program will have an award, a small light touch award specifically for individual artists, or as they call them, cultural workers mobility. So that's something to really keep an eye out in the new program. So what do these projects do? And I think this is probably what would be of interest to many people here, is the projects themselves under Creative Europe are very large scale projects, but they act as mini funding hubs themselves. So if you are interested, especially if you are emerging artists, the young people here are coming out and hopefully wanting to pursue a career, long-term career within the arts, a lot of these projects are a good starting point. So one, it was the Youth Theatre of Ireland was the partner. And they had a project that was essentially a training and professional development project for people working in the field of theatre for young people. So this was a really interesting example. They had, I've put the link there, they had an open call for artists. Anyone could have applied, and you would have had significant kind of training and professional development and mobility opportunities funded through this project. So that's really something, start seeing, link in with our website and with our channels, and you'll start to see these projects and the opportunities that come out of them. So I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to just, because I will send these out. So the main funding program under Creative Europe is called Support for Cooperation Projects, and that's the main arts project funding strand. So keep an eye out for that. But I also really wanted to take the opportunity to flag the Erasmus Plus program. So I know many of you are familiar with the higher level Erasmus, which is managed by the Higher Education Authority here. but LERGIS is the national authority for all the EU funding programs to do with youth, vocational training, lifelong learning, all of that. So this is one, if you are interested in this area, this is the program to probably start on. So there's a huge, there's a huge scale to the funding. So you could have a very individual youth exchange to like a very large scale strategic partnership project. And Ireland participates in this program at a very high level. So I would say if you're interested, definitely get in touch with LERGIS. They have all their direct contacts on their website, and I'll send that out after. So I had a little exercise, and this is by no means an exhaustive list, but when I looked on the LERGIS website, these are some of the organizations here, arts organizations who receive funding through Erasmus+, and a lot of them had, multiple awards over the years or grants over the years. So I'm just going to rush through some final thoughts. And I think what was amazing to see is Shona touched on a lot of these, within when she's talking about the Young Ensemble Scheme. And Christina mentioned some of these ideas. I mean, this is really, I think the first thing to do, if any of these things, is start your research. So start kind of looking at projects that have been funded. If anyone is really interesting to you, get in touch with them, see what they have planned. There's a huge level of generosity across these projects in the arts sector. So I feel like that's your first, but then also look at your own organization or your own work and start kind of saying, does what we want to do here in Ireland, does that match what the EU wants to fund? Because I think there's an easy way and a hard way for these things. And if you're trying to, do all of your national work and realize all of your national projects, and then try to have something completely different added on top as a European project, that's a very tough route. Where if you start to find, kind of areas of alignment, and, realistically, if something is a challenge, to your sector here in Ireland, chances are it's going to be the same in another European country. So by working together with other partners on one of these projects, you can really leverage your ability to, to achieve things. And then, another thing that's really important is to look at your local and your national networks, because that can be a way to take part in these projects. We've had projects where an individual artist had amazing contacts, which I know so many of you will, at community level, and then linked in with her local council who applied for European funding because they had the administrative, kind of experience and capacity there. So start, talking with your national funders, start talking with Shona, start talking with the Arts Council, and kind of so that they're aware of your longer term ambitions, and, you can start to weave them together. And then finally, just get in touch and follow up, because we'd love to, we'd love to hear from you and hear about your plans. So that's me done the whistle stop tour. So I'll stop talking now and stop sharing.
Thanks a million, Katie. And I think if everyone can come back on board now, we're going to have, we've gone over time, but we did think that we might go to 6:30. So just if there's any final questions and answers that have been coming up in the chat, Katie's going to facilitate us. Yeah, the other Katie.
Yes, I know. So there's been a few questions, and if anyone wants to keep firing them into the chat, we'll maybe do about 5 minutes, I'd say, because we have a couple of minutes at the end to show the LYDC excerpt again. So one question was directed to Droichead, and I know, Christina, we kind of responded in the chat, but just so that people watching back can see it as well, and the wider group, just the idea around idea generation and the different ways that you as an ensemble, and hopefully Sean and Aisha will have a response, but the ways that you have developed ideas. So you gave one example as more of an organic process, but maybe just a few pointers around that.
I mean, we did specifically pick Young, Oh What a Lovely War to talk about it because it was very organic, but it's always very different, in how we create each project. Sometimes it will be a case of and Aisha, just to prep you, I'm coming to you next to talk about Shakespeare, so think about that. Sometimes it'll be a case of where the young people know very clearly we want to do this kind of play, or we want to, we want to explore World War I because we know nothing about it and it's very dramatic. Sometimes it'll be a case of I just want to do a killer scene, or I really want a scene, I want something that explores relationships or family dynamics, or I just want like a really strong character who's not just roles for girls in plays. They just don't exist. So, you know, how can we address that? Sometimes it might look at Sean there, yeah. Sometimes it's a case of what are the technical things, or what do you want as performers, as artists? And then I might go away and pitch a couple of projects. Aisha, do you want to talk a little bit there about what we did a Shakespeare festival last year, which was ideal for moving online Shakespeare. A little bit about your memories of us, of how we came across that, because it was very different from Lovely War in terms of what we were looking for.
I mean, like Christina said, usually before we start a new project, either she'll sort of pick things out for us already if, you know, in the last term, that's sort of what we were leaning towards. But usually it starts with all of us sort of sitting in a circle, maybe snacking, maybe not. And just sort of going through what each of us want, and she'll go around the circle, you talk, you talk, you talk. And, you know, everyone always has something to say. You'll find with drama people, we're all very opinionated. So like Christina said, it'd be, you know, something like, oh, I'd love to work with costumes. I'd love something to do there. Oh, I'd love to have a period piece, etc. And eventually, you know, one of the proposed pieces was Shakespeare. And then we kind of fell into a little bit of a Shakespeare loophole. And it just sort of happens like that. So, you know, sometimes you do plan for these things. Like, it's always great to have Shakespeare in the bag. So that sort of enabled us even further to go in that direction. But usually it's nice to, you know, you don't need to feel like your project has to have this huge big origin story. You could even just go looking for things, and then if it works with the group, it works. You know, different projects come out with different ways.
Yeah, our current, what we're working on at the moment for the Young Ensembles, it didn't come from this bad discussion. It came from me sitting there being like, what am I doing online? Let's just read plays. Let's just read plays every week for a month so I don't have to come up with more mental theatre Zoom content. And we just read a rake of plays. And from that, members were like, oh, this is deadly. Can we just do this? And I'm like, oh, really? I was literally just trying to fill an hour. And then suddenly we spent months being like, well, which of these do we like? So it doesn't have to be this big. And then we realized we were going to change the world using theatre. Although you can change the world using theatre. Some people came to see our production of Laramie Project and changed how they voted in the marriage equality referendum. So I'm going to tell that story until I die. Like, so, you know, but it doesn't have to be that big. You know, it can just be as simple as, I want to play a part as a woman that's not just about being in love with someone else. So suddenly, and I want to do a courtroom drama. And next thing we're looking at the Crucible. Don't steal my idea. That's our plan. You know, so don't stress if it's not this big life-shattering moment, I would say.
Super, thank you. I have a few questions probably coming to you really, Shona. So one I know is to do with the kind of the timeline for the project. So if it starts after the date in June, can it run into 2022?
So yeah, we try to be as flexible as possible. So I had mentioned earlier, don't let your project start before the 24th of June to give us time to assess the proposal. But yeah, you usually, after you receive an award, you have 12 months to do it, but we're always very flexible if there are, if you need to delay your project. So for example, through COVID, because of COVID, there were a number of delays. But yeah, in terms of planning your project, you know, we recognize that usually the best projects will involve a process that takes time. So yeah, so that for 2021, your proposal should be something that's going to start this year, but we recognize it could go into 2022. So it could take you a year in total, or even a little bit longer, what with the current pandemic. I just see another question here, which, you know, you may be about to ask me, Katie, but just as to whether you can apply for less than 10,000. And of course you can. You should just apply for what you need. And that's where your budget making sense and being feasible, that you're not just going, oh, I can apply for this. So, or, you know, or just going for strand 2 because it's just more money. Like, really just think about what do you need, and your budget should make sense. So absolutely, it could be, you don't have to apply for the maximum amount.
Super. And Shona, there was one other question which was specific, but was, can a youth centre, they're just checking that they heard you correctly, a youth centre can apply for the creative schools? So slightly separate. It might be something that someone could email us.
Youth Reach, yeah. So go double check on the Creative Schools page of our website around it. But it's really, it's Youth Reach centres and primary and post-primary schools are listed out there, I'm pretty sure. So you can double check there.
So I think we've got 2 minutes to past. I think we're probably at time. I'm just going to pop our contact details and a thank you to everybody, especially to the young people who gave us all their insights and ideas, and we're just so open. Thank you for sharing. It's lovely to have you all here. Sean, is there anything else, or will we leave it, hand over to Emer?
Yeah, just to say that if we haven't answered your questions, we will be able to, we're going to save a copy of the chat and we'll try and get back to you, but do contact us at ypce@artscouncil.ie if you have any more questions. And thank you so much for tuning in, and thank you so much to all of the panelists today. You're really wonderful. So I'm looking forward to looking back at it myself again when I'm less distracted and watching you all again. So thanks very much to everybody.